All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, I'll be doing my preview and prediction for Utah versus Florida, one of the biggest games in Pac-12 history, as this conference this offseason has faced a lot of scrutiny. They're under attack from other conferences for some of their prized teams. They're trying to get some respect here by traveling to Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, taking on the Gators as 2.5-point favorites. Over-under set at 51. This one will be on ESPN at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And Florida won the only meeting back in 1977. Kicking things off, we're going to look at Utah's offense. 8 starters are back on a unit that averaged 36 points per game last season. The offense struggled early in the year with Charlie Brewer under center. He started 1-2. Cam Rising was given the go at some point in that San Diego State game that they lost. He performed quite well, and so he was given the starting job after that. Performed very exceptional. End of the year with nearly 2,500 yards as a passer, 20 touchdowns, only 5 picks. 499 yards and 6 scores as a runner. Very savvy football player. He doesn't have the traits that will jump off the screen, from a prospect perspective or anything like that. But he's a leader. It's been around a few seasons. 6'2", 220, got great size. Walk past him after the Pac-12 title game. He just seems so appreciative to be here, be a part of this football team, and be their leader under center. 191 yards per game through the air. Not a staggering number, but this offense has tremendous balance, and that's exactly what Rising brought to them last year from not just a throwing standpoint, but through the ground as well. So Braden Covey, remember, he arrived in 2015, was actually a junior, could have came back for yet another season, but he finally moves on. That's really the only loss here on this offense besides, Nick Ford and another lineman, I believe, as well. 2 great tight ends, though. Opposite players, though. Brant Cooley, 6'2", 230. Really isn't a tight end due to his size. They get him in the slot or out wide. Very good route runner, strong after the catch. Dalton Kincaid, 6'4", 242. Great ball skills, much better contested catch guy. Those were first and third on the team in receiving. Both had 500-plus yards, combined for 14 touchdowns. Neither of these receiving cores are really deep, but I think Utah has an edge because of those 2 tight ends. Those are going to be tough matchups up the seam, and, they're going to get them involved in a variety of different ways, and those 2 are going to be very crucial. If Florida can match up with them, they'll probably win. If not, then I think that's going to be a big deciding factor is those 2 tight ends. That goes for every team all year long, though. Those guys are going to be tough matchups, tough asks for teams to guard. Looking at the receivers, though, entering his 4th year is Devon Veely. He's technically a rising sophomore, averaged nearly 17 yards per catch last season, only 23 receptions. Solomon Ennis enters his 5th year, only 22 grabs himself last year. There's some veterans here at wide receiver. Returning production at the position isn't great, but I'm not really worried because of the way the offense operates and having those 2 tight ends. Those guys are the ones who ate up all the production last season. It doesn't call for great wide receiver production is basically what I'm saying. More so just consistency, and I think if they can get that, they'll be pretty good in this game and throughout the year. 3 different backs had 500-plus rushing yards. They lose T.J. Pledger, but they return 2 great runners. And Tavion Thomas, 1,100-plus yards and 21 touchdowns, which was a school record. 6'2", 221. I love Thomas. He's a nice inline runner, staggering in between the tackles. He's a thumper as well. Impressive in the short area. Nice change of direction mixed with acceleration. Kyle Whittingham's had a long line of great runners over the past couple of seasons. They all seem to be very similar. But the upside here with Thomas seems to be unlike any other because of those traits I just listed off with that size. Thomas, very impressive guy, perfect fit for the scheme, and he provides more than that. So I think Thomas, he's going to be in for a big-time season. He's going to get a lot of touches in this ball game. And then Micah Bernard, 87 carries for 529 yards. He also caught 26 passes for 251 yards. He only found the end zone 4 times. He's an athlete. They had him playing corner in the Rose Bowl. He's covering the nation's best receiver in Jackson Smith-Njigba. Of course, he didn't do so good. No one really does, even pure corners. But he did have 10 tackles, caught a touchdown in the first quarter of that game on a great reception. So plenty of versatility in Bernard. That just shows what kind of athlete he is. They replaced 2 starters up front. Like I said, Nick Ford being one of them. But I'm not worried. The sources around the program, they've raved about Paul Amali, 6'2", 304. Great communicator, high football IQ player. He's going to be a breakout star for them, no doubt. Has a tough matchup here at center against this Florida interior D line. But I think Molly, he's going to be a great player for them this season. Keaton Bills, he's a player to watch. He's going to move back to right guard. He was on the other side last year for most of 2021. And Braden Daniels, a second-team All-Pac-12 last year. He's only 6'4", 299. This guy was sound in pass protection. Overall, this is a very good unit for Utah. It's going to be, a balanced attack. That's their MO. That's what they want to do, not just this game, but throughout the year. There's 2 tight ends, though, that are really going to decide a lot of things. Utah's going to want to stay ahead of the sticks. They're going to be wanting to be in those 3rd and 30, 3rd and 4 situations, give those tight ends an opportunity to work, or the running backs to take over. And I think that's really going to be the key for Utah in this game. Going on the road, trying to control the clock, stay ahead of the chains, and that's going to be the game plan for the Utes. Looking at the Florida offense, Anthony Richardson, he's given the keys to the offense. An elite skill set. The running skills are top-notch. 51 carries, 401 yards, nearly 8 yards per catch. He can be a power runner as well. He's 6'4", 236, mixed with that speed. I mean, it's ridiculous what Richardson brings to the table. Very impressive arm strength as well. Makes plays quickly. Not exactly a pocket passer at this moment in time, but he's just showing the ability to be patient and find an open man. Struggled to take care of the ball at times, though. Throw into double coverage late versus LSU in a game they were driving to try and take the lead or tie up. Should have been a 3-0 game at the half versus Georgia. Then he had 3 straight turnovers in the matter of minutes. It was 24-0 because of his mistakes. So, obviously, Richardson, he's not a perfect prospect, but, he's got a lot of upside, and that's why a lot of people see him as a top 5 quarterback in next year's draft because the skill set is, for a raw talent, he's very impressive. And we'll see what he can do in this game. He's, as versatile as they come, though, so he can do a lot of things for them. 23rd in FBS, though, for this rushing attack, 208 yards per game. Backfield stays loaded. I believe DeMarcus Bowman transferred out again. Lorenzo Lingard, I think he's still there. But those guys didn't really do much positive in the spring game. It's more about Montrell Johnson, the Sun Belt Freshman of the Year, 838 yards and 12 touchdowns. He also had a 99-yard run last year, showcasing impressive speed. Very good at finding the hole. He comes over from Louisiana Lafayette. Naquan Wright as well, consistently had 7 or 8 carries a game, only 76 on the year, but he was used so often, and those numbers were so consistent. Also caught, 14 balls, 500-plus yards on 90 touches, some pretty solid production from Wright. He's going to probably be that number 2 this season. Kind of like Utah, the receiving core isn't exactly anything to write home about. Outside speed at pass catchers are a concern. That, impressive depth they had from a few years back is now pretty much cycled out. Justin Shorter, former 5-star, still here. Last year, I said so many times during my Bama preview, he needed to be used against those smaller corners because he's 6'5", 228, and he had 0 whole catches. They didn't get him on the field for whatever reason. He did end the year with 550 yards and 41 grabs. I was second on the team. Strong hands that can allow him to win on the inside. Catching traffic is impressive. Justin Shorter is really going to be a key, crucial player this season for them. He's got that size, and he has some good talent. So, very interested to see what Shorter can do here in week 1 against, a very talented corner, Clark Phillips, that might, I don't think he'll shadow him, but when he's on his side of the field, it's going to be a tough ask to beat him. It seems like a lot of guys that are, 6'2", and taller or 210-plus pounds. I think the size in the receiving core is pretty solid. Dejon Reynolds, a guy I'm watching, above-average route runner, contested catch guy. Trent Whittemore, one of those players as well. So we'll see what happens with the receiving core throughout the year. I mean, Xavier Henderson as well, it wasn't very impactful as we expected last year. Used sparingly. It was a good route runner, though. A nice catch radius for him. Some of the guys I'm eyeing at the receiving core, we'll see what happens, because right now I'm not very high on them, but the talent is certainly there. It's nothing to be too worried about. But it's certainly a little concerning, so we'll see what happens with this receiving core. I think Billy Napier will figure it out. The offensive line, though, really solid last year. Didn't allow many sacks. This product of 2 running quarterbacks as well, but their running yards per game number proves that these guys were good. 170 rush yards per game in the conference. It's still pretty good. They had 160 against Georgia. I know that was kind of a blowout, but still Georgia, even in garbage time, they don't allow anything. So impressive mark there. They tore Bama apart early on in the year, and that really forced Alabama to kind of boss up against the run because they were pretty dynamite the rest of the season. But they would have won that game if they had a few more minutes, in my estimation, because this running game was just so gnarly against the Tide. They pick up Osiris Torrance as well. Short area quickness and the leg drive really stand out about him. Great athleticism for being a 6'5", 335-pound guard. The quicker SEC defenders, though, might possess some issues on the interior, and same can go get for Utah. These are high-end football players. Utah, they're stacked on the defensive line, so I think that's one thing to watch with Torrance. He's obviously been a great player at the Sun Belt, but how to step up in competition at the Power 5, fair him, remains to be seen. But they do return 3 starters, left tackle, left guard, center. The line has good size, a really good unit. I think right tackle is only a question mark. But overall, this is a very good offensive line. It's really going to lead the way for Florida this year. I expect kind of a similar game plan as last year. They get some more beef in the backfield with Johnson. Richardson's going to have a much bigger role this year. So I think this offensive line has room to continue to grow with these players running behind it. I think this offense this year, it's really going to be a run-first type of mentality for Florida. This game is going to be one of those as well, which might not be good. That matchup might not favor them because the Utah defense, despite only getting 5 starters back, they are very tough. They lose a number of guys who declare early. Lloyd was the only draftee, though. Looks like a handful of guys probably should have stayed put. They had a number of freshmen make an impact last year, though, so I'm not really worried about them losing all this production outside of Lloyd, who's not really replaceable. But they got some good talent at linebacker with them in a minute. The defensive line has always been a strong, physical, productive unit. 2022 figures to be no different. 10 of the 14 players recorded a sack last year were freshmen, so there's plenty of youth hitting the field. Junior Tafuna, 6'5", 290, was a stout nose last year as a freshman. Devin Kafusi, his brothers, all played at BYU. He ends up here at Utah. 6'7", 300 pounds. That's ridiculous size. They're going to want to get him involved in one way or another because you can't keep a player like that off the field. Van Fillinger is one of those young guys I was talking about, shine on the D-line. 5.5 sacks, 9.5 tackles for loss. The other defensive end spot isn't exactly impressive. Jonah Ellis, he might slot into there. His dad actually coaches the defensive tackles there. Depth isn't great, but I love Gabe Reed coming over from Stanford. He's going to play some big-time snaps for this team. 10 TFL last year, along with 61 tackles. Had 7.5 tackles for loss or more in 3 of his 4 seasons with the Cardinal. Not much of a pass rusher, but does a great job of collapsing the run. I think that's exactly what they're going to be looking for throughout the year and in this game. I think depth might be an issue early on for this team, and this is going to be, a great proving point for them because they've always had strong rotational help on the D-line, and this will be a great opportunity to prove that still is true here against a tough offensive line and a good running game. Linebacker is the biggest concern because Lloyd, of course, departs. Sewell also is gone. Nephi, he departs. Mohamed Diabate, though, he comes over from Florida. First game will come against his former team in the Swamp. The leading tackler for them a season ago comes over to give the Utes a boost here. They have plenty of young guys as well. The Lander Barton, he's one of the top ranked commits in school history. Top 10 linebacker, his position. Has good size, 6'4", 220. Some impressive athletic traits, that allows him to match up in coverage. He can come off the edge as well. Interested to see what Barton does for them early on in the year. Ethan Calvary, he was actually ranked higher than Barton as a recruit. He's a physical, tough guy. He already arrived at school last year with those characteristics to make plays on this roster. He's a former safety. He gets downhill fast, has nice instincts. So I'm very excited for Barton and Calvert this year, especially in this game because that vertical running game for Florida, they like to make their money through the tackles, but they can get on the edge and make plays as well. They've shown no hesitation to do that. I do think it's going to start in between the tackles, though. But these guys are going to be tasked with tackling guys like Johnson or Wright outside. Even Richardson, I know he's a little bit bigger, almost 240 pounds, but his speed is no joke. So I think these linebackers will really be tested in this game. They have the talent to get it done, but the experience is kind of lacking. Overall, I'm very excited for the linebacking group. They're going to be just fine long-term throughout the year, but this game's going to be really telling to see what these guys can do because they face that tough matchup there in the trenches. Secondary loses 2 starters. It was a middle pack type of year for them. They allowed over 3,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, but improvement should be a given due to her returns. Overall, I'm kind of iffy on this secondary group, but I do think they have a pretty solid matchup because the Florida receiving corps does not possess too many threats. They're really going to blow you out the water. Cole Bishop, great versatile DB that shined down the stretch of his debut season. 55 stops, 9 tackles for loss. All 9 of those came across the final 6 games. From November to January, he was just making an impact so good for them late in the year when he got on the field. Same with his tackle numbers. They all came late in the season. He was able to provide a boost late. Clark Phillips, one of the nation's top corners. Not sure, what's going to happen if he's going to shadow. I think he'll just stay on his side of the field for the most part, but shorter. He's a taller guy, so we'll see what happens. You're going to need a great overall playmaker against a taller pass catcher. He swats away balls, forces fumbles, tackles with energy, good high IQ football player, and play speed. So I think his ability to just make plays and swat away those balls, his ball skills are going to be the biggest reason why he would probably shadow Justin Shorter because I like his hands, and that height is obviously a concern. So that should be a fun little matchup when those guys are paired up against each other. Travis Broughton on the other side. He's a veteran, going to occupy that cornerback spot. A very sound duo of corners here. The rest of the DBs are kind of questionable. So if they encounter, a targeting or someone gets a little hurt, maybe cramps in week 1 are an issue, and these backups have to get on the field, and I think Florida's going to look to take advantage of that downfield. Because these DBs kind of questionable. Other than 3 guys I just mentioned, we're not really sure who's going to fill those depth spots. We'll see who has earned their spot here in off-season camp. But overall, I think that's one big concern is the DBs, the linebackers against the run. Overall, the defense, they might take a step back this year. Pass rushing group a little iffy, and that's kind of the best way to complement a secondary that might have its own struggles. Very excited for all 3 levels of this defense and how fast they can gel together. Very excited for Utah this season, and this is going to be a great game to learn this, even if the final score is not all that close. I do think we're going to learn a lot about both of these football teams. Utah, really in the front 7 is going to be a big opportunity to see what they can do against this SEC front. Looking at the Florida defense, a 3-3-5 look. Gervin Dexter at nose, a good interior pass rusher with length. I talked about Paul Molly. This is his first big test. Dexter had 51 tackles and 7 QB hurries last year. He really emerged as a playmaker there on the D-line. Desmond Watson, 6'5", 415. That's absurd size. He's going to be a gap clogger if I've ever seen one when he gets on the field. Not many proven commodities, though, in this D-line. They replaced numerous vets up front. Brenton Cox, 14 TFL. 8.5 sacks, good speed rusher, nice second effort. He's going to be a big-time contributor for them off the edge if he's given the opportunities. If they cannot slow down the run, that's not going to give their best player an opportunity to make plays off the edge. So I do think that's one thing to watch is what will Cox do in this game because they're going to have to back him up. They can't be in 3rd and short the whole game and expect Cox to make plays. Ventrell Miller, that was sideline to sideline playmaker at linebacker, he's back. I think that might be a big reason why Diabate opted to transfer out because Miller, he's so good. And that's really, he only played 2 games last year. They really missed him. this is exactly who they need as a player like this against this type of offense. Of course, Utah, they're going to want to make their money between the tackles as well. But they'll kick it outside as well. Biggest question with these linebackers, can they match up with the tight ends I alluded to earlier, Kincaid and Cooley? These guys aren't exactly full of size, Miller and Burney. Amari Burney's a veteran who's back as well. So we'll see what happens there. It's going to be a big matchup for them. Not exactly convinced they can stop those tight ends, but, good football players will make plays and prove me wrong. So we'll see what happens. The run defense, though, wasn't all that great. The pass defense I thought was much better. Only allowed one 300-plus yard game. And that was 400-plus yards to Samford. Kind of strange there. But they were second in the conference in opponent completion rate, 57%. Georgia was a full point better than that. Teams also didn't throw as much due to the run defense being poor, but they covered underneath quite well. Downfield wasn't as pretty. I don't think that's really a threat here. They do have those big play receivers, though, for Utah, who averaged good yard per catch numbers last year, so they can make you pay downfield. But overall, I'm not too concerned about the downfield game other than the tight ends picking up, 15 yards on the seam. Corey Raymond comes over as the DB coach. He was in LSU for a decade. He arrives here in Gainesville. Jason Marshall struggled early on, but excelled in press. Didn't record a single penalty after week 3. He's going to replace Kiar Elam in this game. He's expected to be the next great Gator corner. Avery Helm, he's a heck of an athlete. Let's see if he gets on the field. Jalen Kimber comes over from Georgia, transfers in to provide a boost here in the defensive backfield. Jordan Young, a young physical player, might get on the field. Trey Dean at safety, though, one of the nation's best, I would say. 91 tackles last year, one of the hardest hitting DBs in the game. Also had 9 pass breakups, showcasing some range. So I think they're going to look to get him on some of those tight ends. I think that's going to be one thing to watch. Very excited for these matchups here. Florida, we'll see how much better this defense was than a season ago, because they had some very disappointing moments last year, especially late in the season when everything was starting to fall apart for them. Overall, linebackers against tight ends, that's going to be key for them. Gervin Dexter leading the charge against the run. That's really where it's going to start, because, we'll see what Watson does as well, because that's where you got to start, is stopping the run with Utah, because they're going to pound it down your throat. They showed against Oregon last year. They have no problem eating up 10 minutes on the clock, resulting in 7 points, because that's going to be a big deal for them. Looking at team comparisons, I gave the edge to Utah in a lot of categories here. I don't feel like Florida is too far behind. I did give the Gators the edge at linebacker just because Ventrell Miller's return is big, and the Utes, even though I think from a talent standpoint, are actually better than the Gators at this moment in time. The inexperience, the youthfulness of their roster at linebacker is kind of a concern for me, so I give Florida the edge there. Defensive line, Gervin Dexter is great, but Utah, they have that depth. They had plenty of freshmen last year who were big-time impact performers, and, they're going to step up and play even more crucial roles this fall. So I think the defensive line for Utah gets the edge. Offensive line as well. Again, Florida's not too far behind. Osiris Torrance is a stud. Utah, though, these guys are big, nasty, very disciplined. The pass catchers, just because of the tight ends, I give it to Utah. Neither team at wide receiver is exactly, impressive, I would say. They do have contributors, solid pass catchers, but overall, neither team's really impressing you at the wide receiver position. Running backs, another spot where Florida's not too far behind. Montreal Johnson and Quan Wright's going to be a really solid duo this year, along with any other depth they have behind that. Batavion Thomas, Micah Bernard's one of the top duos in college football. Pretty unanimous decision there. Anthony Richardson, I like the talent, but Cam Rising last year proved to be an exceptional leader who really fit this offense, so he's going to get the edge there. I don't really think there's too much of a debate. I do think these teams are closer than you see on screen right now. In the secondary as well, Florida, Marshall, and Dean, phenomenal, but Clark Phillips, Cole Bishop, the veteran corner duo of him and Broughton, Phillips and Broughton, that is, I do think that they have the edge there, even though I don't think Florida's too far behind. So I think these teams are much closer than I'm saying. I do think that Utah, this is a legit CFP contender. They were just in the Rose Bowl. They do not lose a whole lot, so I do think this roster at this moment in time is much more talented than the Gators. Leaving to my final thoughts in the prediction, I think the Utah tight ends, I've been talking about it the whole episode. Brant Cooley, Dalton Kincaid, they're going to be successful downfield. I expect balance from this ground game with, Cam Rising's legs getting involved a good bit, control the clock well, keep Anthony Richardson, who's very explosive on the sidelines, and that running game that I don't think they'll have very much success. It's going to be a great battle in the trenches, though, for the UF O-line and against the Utah D-line. I think that's really going to be a matchup the Gators have to try and take advantage of, but I think the Utes will be up for the challenge. I think they're going to slow things down there, and that's Florida's best chance to win. I think, force some turnovers, don't let them eat up the clock, and then we'll just see what happens. I do think that the Florida run game will have its moments of success. They'll have to get Richardson involved as well. I think he'll pick up some third and fourth and shorts. But overall, I think Utah will stand tall in the red zone. They'll get off the field on third down. They're going to keep everything in front of them in the secondary and be, numerous third and shorts on offense that keeps them on the field and keeps that clock rolling. I see them going on the road 31-20, beating the Gators here in Gainesville. I think this will be a very close game. I think the fourth quarter, gas tank's going to run out for that defense. They're going to be getting worn down a good bit. And Thomas and Utah and, Bernard as well. Those guys are going to cap things off. It's going to be a really fun game. Can't wait to see what happens. Big-time opportunity for the Utah Utes to make a statement here against the Pac-12. I totally understand the 2.5-point line because I think that Florida can really compete here. I have the Utes squeaking one out, though, on the road here in Week 1. That's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.